Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Valerie Z, the founder of Spiritual Cardio, a 10-week group coaching program that teaches women how to make peace with their inner truth and practice self-love, where we heal in community by interrogating our inner demons until they lose power over us. I'm bringing you the powerful spiritual practices that helped birth my transformation because I want the same for you. I'm going to teach you how to build a love story with yourself and your inner child. So let's go. I'm sure you guys know by now how much I love doing this show. I pour my heart and soul into each episode to create a ripple effect of healing and self-awareness in the world. And you guys can help me make that little ripple into a wave. So I ask that if you find value in this episode, or if you had any aha moments, or if the show helps you navigate your life in a more positive direction, please share the show. It would mean so much to me if you would do that. And now let's get into it. Hey, you guys, this is episode 29. Thank you for coming back and tuning in to the Spiritual Cardio podcast. This is Valerie Z. Let's get into it. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I notice not only within myself, but in society, which is the topic of self-love. And I want to talk about the indicators that you may be suffering from a self-love deficit. And this is a big part of my story. If you've listened to previous episodes, you know that I was living a lifestyle that was self-destructive. And in the way I was living my life, I realized that there was a huge self-love deficit. And I think even though I've touched on that, I want to go deeper on it because I want people to start noticing the signs of if they're going through this, because in order for you to start loving yourself, well, first you have to be aware that there's an issue, right? So that's what I wanted to talk about today was the indicators of the fact that you may be suffering from a self-love deficit, aka you don't love yourself, aka self-hate. For me, it started out with noticing how I was talking to myself. So we all have this inner voice within us, and that inner voice can either love us, right? Or it can be our biggest enemy. I want you to notice the way you talk to yourself. So let's say you do something wrong. Maybe you wake up late for work. Maybe you're late to an appointment. It can be many things, right? But start paying attention to the way you speak to yourself. Do you speak to yourself in a way that puts you down? Is it an echo of the way you were treated growing up? Maybe you grew up in an abusive household, and so this voice is sort of an echo of how you were treated. Pay attention to that voice because that voice can either help you navigate life in a positive direction or it can continue breaking you. Either way, you want to pay attention to what that voice is telling you. I've noticed this in many people and how they speak to themselves. And I think I pay attention to it more now because I've deprogrammed from that really toxic, hurtful inner critic within me. So I'll notice if, let's say, for example, my mom, like if she does something, and it can be anything, like she might drop something on the floor, right? And she'll say, like, ay, pendeja. And she calls herself names. And if I hear her do it, I try to correct her and tell her, don't talk to yourself like that. But pay attention to how you treat yourself when you have little or big disappointments. Because what you want to do is change that narrative. This isn't specifically about changing the narrative. This is about you figuring out whether there is a self-love deficit within you. Another key indicator would be how you treat other people. So, how you treat other people in a moment of disagreement or in a moment of heated anger is a indicator of how you feel about yourself on the inside, because a person who loves themselves, who has done the work, who respects themselves is not going to treat people in a way that is disrespectful, in a way that violates boundaries, right? So if you treat yourself a certain way, then you are more likely to treat people that way, the way in which you talk to yourself. So for example, if I'm upset with somebody and we're having an argument and I start name calling them, that is a reflection of how I feel of myself. When you love yourself and you respect yourself, you would not talk to other people that way, because you would not even talk to yourself that way. Right. And so I think I used to be toxic. So before I did any inner work on myself, I would say, and this is like with all honesty and humility, I was the type of person that was in a not so healthy relationship where there was name calling. That used to be me. And so I have been in situations in recent relationships where I did not name call at all, despite the fact that I was being gaslit, manipulated, lied to. And I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that when I chose to do my inner work, it did start reflecting in my relationships. So, how I treated people in moments of anger or disappointment changed. So, that's what I mean. And pay attention in how you treat other people. The way you treat yourself correlates to how you treat other people. So, that's a big one. Another indicator of whether there is a self love deficit within you is how you are living your life. So, if you're living your life in a self destructive lifestyle, and I've talked about this a lot on previous episodes, would be that like, are you in a rush? Are you in a rush to disconnect from yourself every weekend? Some people get home from work and, immediately they make themselves a cocktail, maybe pour themselves a glass of wine, and then before they know it, they're having, the whole bottle. I know this from experience. And some people might tell themselves, well, I just want to take the edge off. I used to tell myself that too. Or I used to tell myself, like on the weekends, especially, I used to tell myself, I just want to have fun. I just want to have a good time. The underlying issue with that is that you are in a rush to escape yourself. So notice how you're living your life, the things that you're consuming. Are you consuming them, whether it be alcohol, drugs, pills, food, so you escape a feeling within you? That's an indicator that there's a self love deficit. And I can speak to this very honestly, because for me, alcohol was that vice. Alcohol was the thing that I consumed to escape myself. And I did that for many years. And when I started realizing that no matter how much alcohol I drank, so no matter how much pills you take, how much food you eat, or how much whatever it is that your vice is, like no matter how much you drink, you cannot escape yourself. You can't, right? Because you have to wake up to yourself. So, a key indicator of there being a self love deficit would be if you're addicted to something. If you're addicted to something to escape yourself, that is a key indicator that there's something deeper going on. And for me, there was a self love deficit. Pay attention to your lifestyle. What are the things you are doing under the guise of having fun or taking the edge off? Because there's other ways you can take the edge off, right? Maybe there's reading, maybe there's meditation, maybe there's a tea, right? There's different ways you can take the edge off. So pay attention to how you are living your life in a way that disconnects you from you. That's really important. Another key indicator that there is a self-love deficit could be how you treat your body. How are you treating your body? What are you consuming? And how do you love your body? Do you take care of your body? Because our body does so much for us. Our body gets us from point A to point B, and just the creation of God with our body, like our physiology, the fact that our lungs breathe air that we need, right? The fact that our cells regenerate, the fact that our limbs, all we have to do is just send a signal from our brain to our limbs, and our arms move, our legs move, and we get from point A to point B. And do you give back to your body? Do you nourish your body? This is a big one for me too. I lived many, many years eating junk, and there's certain things that I still love, but I do them in moderation now, like pizza. I freaking love pizza, or cheesecake, ice cream, right? Where before I would have that like several times a week. And now I've gotten to a place where I know that I need to moderate myself and check in with myself when I find myself having cravings too frequently. So that's a big one, is how we treat our body. Are we nourishing it with the right foods? And also movement. If you know that you feel good after doing 30 minutes of cardio, but you're choosing not to do it, check in with yourself. Because if you know that something is going to nourish your body and your soul, then you should do that, and you should do it regularly. If not every day, every other day, 3 times a week, right? Because you know it's going to feed you. Pay attention to how you treat your body. Another indicator would be, how do you feel when you look in the mirror? What's the first thing that crosses your mind when you look in the mirror? That's a huge one. For me, an indicator in retrospect is, I used to look at myself in the mirror and just feel blank. I used to look at myself in the mirror and not feel anything, like just a blank stare. And I was in a rush to not look at myself in the mirror. I could not make eye contact with myself in the mirror. And there was no love there. Looking at myself in the mirror was emptiness. That's the feeling that I had. So that's another key indicator of there being a self-love deficit. When you look yourself in the mirror, how do you feel? Pay attention to that. Check in with yourself. Self-reflecting is such a powerful tool for healing. Just taking the time to observe yourself. Nothing changes unless you have awareness first. And how do you become aware? Well, then you start noticing these things about you. You start noticing how your inner voice treats you. You start noticing how you're living your life on the weekends. You start noticing what you're consuming. You start noticing if you are in a rush to disconnect yourself. You start noticing how you feel about yourself when you see your reflection looking back at you in the mirror. Those are key things that you can start to pay attention to so that you can start changing your life. Nothing happens unless you're willing to become aware. So willingness is so important. The willingness to be aware, the willingness to change, the willingness to commit to a different lifestyle. The willingness to commit to love yourself. Hey ladies, are you craving transformation and personal growth? Are you ready to get radically honest with yourself and own your story? Are you ready to build confidence so that you can manifest your goals? If so, then this may be just what you're looking for. Spiritual Cardio is a course in transformational wisdom that combines traditional spiritual practices with real life experience. At Spiritual Cardio, we heal in community where we can be vulnerable and raw. Because when one woman speaks her truth, she begins to heal, and she opens the door for another woman to speak hers. At Spiritual Cardio, every lesson is designed with you in mind. That includes practical tools with relatable real-life examples. At Spiritual Cardio, we help identify and release energetic blocks so that you can become the architect of your destiny. Head over to valeriezapeta.com to read the powerful testimonials from previous clients and register for an upcoming session. Group and one-on-one coaching is available. All sessions are live and in real time. Now back to the show. All of these indicators that I've talked about, you can change them. I share a lot of my story because I want you to know where I come from. I want you to know my past so that you can see that it's possible for you too. I'm just a normal human being that comes from a dysfunctional background, and I've been able to transform my life. I've been able to turn my trauma into something powerful that can help you transform your life, because I'm trying to be an inspiration for you. I'm trying to inject hope into you by sharing my story. And I'm trying to transfer the wisdom that I've learned from working on all of my wounds. I'm trying to transfer that wisdom that I've learned to you. And so if you're tuning into this, I just want to thank you first and foremost for listening. And secondly, I want to commend you for deep diving into an episode like this, because the fact that you're here listening to this is because you are ready to make a change. You are getting curious about where you're at in your life. And curiosity is what has the power to change you, because everything that I put out is put out with intention and purpose. And if this episode helps you navigate your life in a more positive direction, it's just like that 1 or 2 or 3 degrees that you are going to change and shift something within you, then that's all you need. So I want to commend you for listening to this, because it all starts with your willingness to change. And the fact that you're listening to this is because you are willing to change something, and you're noticing that something's got to give, something's got to change. The way I started changing was that I started getting tired of my own BS. I started getting tired of the way I was living my life. I started noticing these things because I was willing to change. And that's how it starts. It starts just like that. You have this willingness to change your life. I was just sick and tired of living my life in a way every weekend where I was waking up from a blackout, trying to put the pieces of my life back together, trying to figure out what the hell happened the night before, how I got home. It was awful. It was an awful way to live. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I can't. I'm done. So, what do I need to do? Why am I living my life like this? Why am I living my life like this? And if you start asking yourself questions like that, you'll notice that nobody else can answer those questions for you. Nobody else can answer a question like that. You have to be willing to get honest with yourself. You have to be willing to get honest with yourself about questions like that. Those questions have the power to change the direction of your life. You do not have to live your life in victimhood. You do not have to live your life in hopelessness. You do not have to live your life in helplessness. All of that can be changed. You just have to have the willingness to get honest with yourself about your inner truth. If you know that you're drinking yourself to oblivion every weekend because there's something within you that you don't want to face, get honest with yourself about that. If you don't love yourself, you got to get honest with yourself about that. Seriously, that's what I did. In coming to the realization that I was living a self destructive lifestyle, one of the hardest things to admit to yourself is that you don't love yourself. Who the hell wants to admit to themselves that they don't love themselves? Nobody. And At that time, I was the type of person that was posting stuff on social media about self love. I was that girl. But the way I was living my life was not proof of self love. There was no evidence of self love in the way I was living my life. So ego would say, yeah, of course I love myself. But your lifestyle will prove that, right? The way you talk to yourself in moments of disappointment will prove that. The way you feel when you look at yourself in the mirror will prove that. So that's what I mean is that if there is a self love deficit, look at your life. Look at the way you are talking to yourself, that inner voice. Pay attention to how you treat yourself in moments of disappointment. Pay attention to how you treat others in moments of disagreement or discomfort. Pay attention to how you treat your body, what you consume. Pay attention to what you do on the weekends. Pay attention to all of that because all of that will give you answers. So, because actions speak louder than words. So I was telling myself that, of course, I love myself and I'm posting stuff on social media. This was many, many years ago. But the way I was living my life, like that is the true indicator of whether I love myself. So I hope that this episode helps you get honest with yourself about whether there is a self love deficit within you. And I hope that I've broken down how you can figure that out, right? All you have to do is be willing to get honest with yourself about your insecurities. Because if there is a self love deficit, that's an insecurity. And that's why we live our life with so much noise and distraction because we don't want to go inward and face the things that are very uncomfortable. They're very uncomfortable. However, if you're willing to get honest with yourself, you can change it. If you're not willing to get honest with yourself, nothing changes. First, you have to bring into awareness what needs to change. It's very simple. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's very simple. This podcast would not exist had I not done that work myself. So, all of spiritual cardio, everything I teach in my coaching program is a reflection of all the work and all the wisdom I've learned because I chose to get honest with myself. I had the willingness to change because I was so tired of the way I was living my life. And so this podcast would not be possible. Spiritual cardio coaching would not be possible had I not had that willingness to look at myself through a lens of honesty, without ego, without buffers, without yes men. And these questions, like I said earlier, you have to ask yourself these questions. Nobody can answer these questions for you. So you have to get honest with yourself. So I hope this episode is helpful for you. I hope that you've learned something here with your questions about self love. I know that self love is this buzzword, right, online. I'm talking about authentic self love here. Like this is real, genuine self love when you're willing to get honest with yourself about the way you are living your life, how you treat yourself and how you treat others, and how you treat your body. That's real self love. Self love is honesty and it's tough love. If you're not willing to face yourself, then there's a self love deficit. If you're not willing to face yourself, there is a self love deficit. You should always be willing to face yourself, whether that be in the mirror, whether that be questioning yourself about how you're treating your body, how you're treating others. You should be able to face yourself. I'm Valerie Z. Thank you for coming back and tuning in to the Spiritual Cardio Podcast. If you'd like to support the show, there's several ways you can do that. You can follow at Spiritual Cardio on social media. You can donate to the show. This is a self-funded show. I love doing it and I hope that it helps you. And if you feel called to, Donate via valeriezapeta.com/donate. I do have a merch page coming up soon where you can support the show by buying spiritual cardio merch. And share this episode with some friends. If you know somebody that's struggling because of all of the issues that I've described here in this episode, share this episode with them. That's all I have. This is Valerie Z. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, thank you for showing up and spending some time with me. If you loved this episode, please make sure to subscribe. And for exclusive content, you can sign up for my newsletter at valeriezapeta.com. I'll see you guys at the next show.